Hello everybody, welcome to today's Knowledge webinar, What's New in Vectorworks 2022. And today, rather than looking at features, we will be looking at the benefits of Vectorworks 2022. There are some important changes to the interface, changes to site models, walls, hardscapes, and so on. We will be looking at how to get the best from these changes. Today's webinar presenter, the one and only Jonathan Pickup, who was trained as an architect in New Zealand and the UK, and he has more than 30 years of experience. He has been writing and producing Vectorworks manuals and providing customer support for more than 20 years. His company, mark this down, ArchonCAD, is the premier provider of third-party manuals and training resources for Vectorworks. He offers monthly webinars and maintains the Visual Knowledgebase for Vectorworks. And let me tell you a little bit about Knowledge. Knowledge is changing the way designers purchase 3D software, offering all the choices, more freedom, all the advice that you need, and the service is top-notch. And now we want to remind you that we have a promotion going on that will last a few more days. It will expire on the 22nd, this Friday. And for people that are already Vectorworks customer that have VSS can purchase another license with 40% discount. So, you know, there's a few days promotion, maybe once a year. This is a big one. And now, sorry, I'm going to share Jonathan's screen. So it will take over and show you what's new in Vectorworks 2022. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks, Barbara. It's always funny to hear that introduction about me. All right, so, and I see there's a couple of other friends there, and there's another Stephen there as well. G'day, Stephen. So, all right, so one of the things I'd like to talk about with Vectorworks is the change in the interface. Now, it might seem like this is really small stuff that they've changed, but some of these things to me have actually been, I'm less than happy with. So there's particularly things to do with the snapping palettes, but we'll go through that. But number one, hopefully everyone recognizes that the attributes palette is changed. I can make it skinnier, but I can't make it longer or shorter. It's actually fixed in its height, which is quite different from what we're used to. We've got here the drop shadow options here now with the three little dots. We've got the arrow, the shadow option there. We've got the arrows here, they've changed. So the position of things has changed quite a lot. The attributes palette is now quite large. There used to be a little arrow at the bottom, which was a menu. That's now become these three lines here. The menu has now moved to the top. We've still got the same options: set default attributes, use default attributes, so on, remove class attributes. So those are still the same as they were before. One of the nice things I like with this new attributes palette is if I wanted to change the opacity of an object, you get this sliding bar here, and you can actually see visually the change in what you're choosing. So it's interactive, you can see it happening, and you'll know when you make that change what the effect is going to be. There used to be an option where you could click on the transparency and then click on preview. Now you get this instant preview. It's not previewing the object itself, but you do get this instant preview on the attributes palette, which is quite cool. I don't know if anyone else has found it, but when I went to tools and I went to the design suite, I can't make the attributes palette turn up again, but it does turn up in the landmark. I'm using the landmark workspace at the moment. So that's number one, the attributes palette's changed quite a lot. The other thing that's changed, there used to be a little button at the bottom of these palettes, which was the utility menu. That's now moved to the top. I must admit, when I first got this interface, I couldn't find these three little bars, and I thought I'd lost my ability to customize. I haven't. It's just moved to the top. So Vectorworks have tried to unify the workspace, if you like, or make it consistent so that the three little bars are at the top of everything, which is quite nice. Those of you that are used to using the snapping palette, if you go to Window, Palettes, and choose Snapping, you'll find it's missing. The snapping palette is no longer available as a floating palette. Instead, Vectorworks have created a bar at the bottom here. This is the data bar, and they've changed the name of this. but here is the snapping palette. So there we've got snap to object, snap to angle, snap to intersection, and so on. Now, when I installed Vectorworks, I found that my keyboard shortcuts that I used to use for this have actually not been assigned. So we might have to go back and assign those. We've got here the ability to suspend snapping. By clicking that, all my snapping is turned off. Click it again, all my snapping comes back on. And of course, holding down the back quote key, the tilde, also temporarily disables snapping. And you can see it's quite easy to see that you've disabled your snapping. I just need to bring up my notes so that I know what I'm talking about. So I've got some notes on my other screen. So we've looked at the snapping palette. Now, one of the things I did find with the snapping palette is that previously, when you opened up the snapping palette and you wanted to make changes to it, you would find that there was a single dialog box that allowed you to go through all the snapping options. You'd be able to go through this one and the next one. That has gone as well. Set object snaps, I think it was called, the dialog box. And now, in order to access each of the snap options, you do have to double click on each of these to bring up the options. So double click on this one to bring up the options, double click on this one to bring up the options. Now, the options are identical to the way they were before. I like this at 0.2 of a second. So these options haven't changed at all. They're still exactly the same options that we had previously, using floating datum, use the T key to set, all that kind of stuff. But you can't quickly go through all of them by using that one dialog box. Now, that, to me, this is a slight disadvantage. I actually find it quite annoying that I have to go to each of these, double click on it. Do I want this one on or do I want it off? But one of the things I wanted to tell you is that if you've got a floating palette, let me bring one across. So I've created this floating palette, and I've got my snaps for designing as a saved option. And the way you create that is you set the options that you want in the snaps. Go to Tools, choose Custom Tool Attribute, and turn on Smart Cursor Settings. Choose that, click OK, and save that. And then you get a floating palette. You can double click on it, and it sets your snaps. If I double click on snaps for dimensioning, you'll notice that a lot of my snaps have turned off. And if I double click on this one, you'll see that it's turned off some of my options here. If I go back and double click on this one again, it's reset them all for me. So these hotkey or these scripts still work, which are really quite cool. So that gets around my problem that I've got with my snaps. Since there's usually only two types of snaps that I use, the snaps for designing and snaps for dimensioning, the snaps for dimensioning turns on all the snaps. Turns off a lot of snaps and makes it really quick for me to dimension. Snaps for designing turns on all my favorites back again, and I can snap to everything. Whereas snaps for dimensioning, it turns off the snaps between objects. So you don't snap to objects, you only snap to the ends of objects, because that's how I like to dimension. So if you don't like this, like me, if you're unhappy about the change in the snapping palette, just remember that these floating palettes still work. So you can set those up. So that's the snapping palette. Now there is a nice one, which I quite like, which is repeat last command. So I've right-clicked away from everything. You can see repeat last command, which was the custom tool attribute. So if I want to do it again, I just have to click on that, and it'll redo it again. And here are the last few things that I've done. So I did fit to page area recently. I did fit to objects recently. Vectorworks remembers these, and it's an easy way for you to get back to it. So the repeat last command is for anyone who's used to AutoCAD, where you can hit the enter key to repeat the last command. In Vectorworks, it's not quite that easy, but it is a right click and you can repeat the last command. So I just remember the name of this. This is called the utility bar down here, where the snaps are now stored. So I'm just looking at my notes. So if I have a look here, one of the things that I really like about Vectorworks is this, is the ability to create objects from a class. Some of you old users that have been familiar with my work before will remember that I made a little utility that did this. But now in Vectorworks, if you've got a class like this one here, which is my structural roof purlins, and you want to update the object or the graphic attributes of that class, or if you want to create a new class, you can select an object, right-click, and you can now create a class using the object attributes. And all you need to do is type in the class name, and it will create a class with the attributes of this object. Or this one, right-click, you can create a class using objects. But the one that's also quite good, I think, is that you can right-click here and you can update class attributes. So I'm going to update a class that I've already created, which is structural, roof, and purlins. So those are my purlins through here, these red ones. So I'm going to click OK, and you'll see that now my purlins no longer have the dashed line, they now have a solid line. Someone was asking about this, the cog wheel down here for the settings. I didn't show this for the snaps. So we can show smart cursor cues, show snap points, snap to combined page area. So those are some settings, but they don't bring up that dialog box that I was looking for, Kevin. So it doesn't quite do what I wanted there. So that was the settings. And if you open interactive appearance settings, it opens up your interactive appearance settings here, where you can change all of your colors and you can change completely the look and feel of your Vectorworks. And this one again was the disable snapping or suspend snapping, snap to working plane. So the snaps haven't changed. If we go back to customizing our Vectorworks, I think my dialog box, there it is there. And we look at keys. So these are all my snapping keys. That now it used to be that snap to grid was, I'm trying to remember, I think it was A was snap to grid, and snap to object was Q. And so they used to have a set of keyboard or a set of hotkeys. That, as I said, in my workspace, they were disabled. So you might want to look at adding those back again. What was it? ASDF, I think, was the ones I quite liked. I think it was A, that was D. I can't remember what they were. I'll have to go back to the old one. But you can add those back again. So just look out for that. If you're used to using those snaps to turn them on and off, then it's not there. But of course, if you go back to my idea of using these saved ones, then you don't have to think about it. You can just double click and it'll set them the way you want. Okay, so I've got here a polygon. So one of the new options for the reshape, so I've done the create class, so reshape. If I look at my reshape tool, with this one's familiar, I think, with the reshape single edge. This one's familiar. They've changed the graphic style of these, which is just cosmetic, but this is new. Move edges to preserve area. So if I move this object, you'll notice that as I move it across, the up and down, well, the height changes. And that's so that it preserves the area of my object, which is just over 3 square meters. Now, this is a polygon that I'm moving, but you can only move this polygon from an edge. You can't move it from a corner in quite the same way. And if you go back to this one and we change the angle of that, and then we try to do the same trick, you'll notice all the handles have gone missing. It doesn't like preserving the area where it's not a rectangle. So where it's a rectangle, it can preserve the area, and you can grab it from a corner or from an edge, and you can get that to line up if you want. So those two objects are the same area, different shape. So that's a new one. And the other one, which I thought was really quite useful, particularly if we're dealing with site modeling, there's a new modify scale objects, which is to scale by area. So for example, if I imported a site plan or a boundary and it wasn't quite right and I knew I needed to change it, I could change the area to something else. So let's change that to 4 square meters. I'm using meters at the moment, but there's a couple of things to be careful of. When you've changed the scale objects, I don't know if anyone's noticed, but my entire drawing has now changed. So in other words, when I scale by area, symmetric by area, it's going to change absolutely everything in this drawing. So every hatch, every texture, every line, every object, absolutely everything everywhere will be updated. Be careful of that, please. So if you're going to use that, just be really, really careful. Remember, it's going to change the entire drawing. If you do this in an existing project, it will update absolutely everything in your drawing. It may not sound bad, but remember, it's going to update. It's going to change the height of my building. It can change the thickness of my roof, change the plan size of my building, everything. So just be careful of that. cancel that. Now, one of the other things that quite often has come up with, particularly with the clients that I teach, quite often is when we're dimensioning, what class do my dimensions end up in? Usually they end up in the dimension class, or they end up in your active class. So if we have a look at my document preferences, dimensions. So we can create dimensions in the dimension class or not. Previously, all you could do was to tell it to create dimensions in the dimension class. You didn't have a choice. You either created them in the dimension class or you didn't. You now have the opportunity to choose the class that you're creating your dimensions in. So I could put them into a notes class. If it was foundation, for example, I could put them in the notes foundation class. And now when I draw, they will be in the notes foundation class. Now, I don't think I've got a class set up for that, so let's go to my foundation plan, and I'm going to edit my design layer, and now I'm going to put some dimensions on, and you'll notice that they end up in the notes foundation class. So when I exit that, they show up in my foundations, but those notes don't show up or shouldn't show up here in this particular viewport. Unless I've left the classes turned on, in which case I'll just find notes foundation and turn those off. Make sure I turn off all the others while I'm here. So those dimensions have now gone. I go back to my floor plan, there they are. They've disappeared here if that class is turned off as well. So Beth, no, this isn't instead of dimensioning in the annotations. Sometimes I dimension the annotations, as you know, Beth, but sometimes I do it in the design layer just because that's where I happen to be when I'm drawing. Okay, so what's next? So dimensions in the dimension class, undo view changes while we're looking at those. Settings, we've got an opportunity when we go to undo, which is under session, we have the ability to put our maximum number of undos. I don't usually change this. You can go up to 99, but I found that sometimes it takes a load of memory in Vectorworks, and I don't worry about it too much, so I don't try to do undo too much. But this is what I wanted to talk about, undo view changes. Now, it used to be group all or group similar or individual, and I could never figure out what that meant. It was just a little bit hard for me to understand, but they've got this new one, which is to only restore the view for object changes, which I like. So for example, I'm going to zoom in, going to go over here, I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm going to move it over here. And when I go undo, you notice the view only changed when it needs to. So it'll keep the view the way it is, and it will only change the view if you really have to. And let's see, so graphics modernization. So one of the things that's changed with Vectorworks, now I don't have one of the new Macintoshes, I don't know if anyone knows, but the couple of new Macs were announced this week. Very high performance Macintosh Pro, MacBook Pros with the Apple Silicon chip. And also I think Microsoft have got a DirectX, is it? A Direct something, that they're speeding up graphics. Now, Vectorworks 2022 has been built so that it runs native on the new Macintosh Silicon, on the new Apple Silicon. So if you've got one of the new M1 chipped computers, you'll find that Vectorworks 2022 runs native instead of running in an emulation mode, which should speed you up as well. And those of you that got your name down for one of the new Mac Pros, you should find that when you get it, Vectorworks runs extremely fast on it. So, screen plane, I don't know if anyone remembers, there used to be a unified view button up here. We used to be able to click along here and find unified view. Unified view is gone. In the past, we used to be able to set different, a different view for each layer. Not many people used it, and I never ever turned unified view off, and if I did, it was a mistake and I'd turn it back on again. Well, they've decided to get rid of unified view. So if we have a look at our document preferences again, we've got some legacy 2D objects. So unified view, let's enable those. So we go back to, we have screen plane, we have working plane, we've got unified view. I'm going to turn those off because I don't want to use those legacy features. I want to get used to the new ones. So in the past, if we went to a front view, I'm going to go to side view actually. I'm going to set my view to orthogonal and I want to create a viewport. Now in the past, if I did this, I'd have to ensure that this object was on the screen plane, but I do not anymore. If I go to view and I say create viewport, it will use that rectangle as the crop object, which in the past, if it was on 3D view, it wouldn't do. So now it's just straight, there's no screen plane, there's no setting stuff to screen plane, so it doesn't exist any longer. I'm just going to undo that and get rid of that rectangle. So we don't have that any longer. What we have instead, if I create a rectangle like that, we have that object, and you can see my rectangle is now a three-dimensional or planar object. I can look at the working plane, which is the plan view. If I go to that view there, I can look at the working plane, and you can see I'm now working on the working plane. I used to use screen plane objects. So if you remember, Stephen, I used to use screen plane objects for doing some of the swept type objects I'd do in 3D. They work just as well without it. If you just set your view, you can look at your view if you like, and you can draw your objects, and then you can sweep it if you want. So I'm just going to draw a little object. So I select both of those and add those together. I should really rotate those a bit so it's easier for you to see the sweep. Up to model, choose sweep. And so the object is now a swept object. So that works fine. You don't notice, I really haven't noticed that I haven't got screen plane any longer. I used to worry about it, and as soon as I started playing with Vectorworks 2020, it seemed odd, but actually I really quickly got used to the idea that there is no screen plane and you can just work on it that way. So this is to look at the working plane. So if I set a view, don't forget you've still got your working plane tools down here, so I can still set a working plane by clicking on that object. I can look at the working plane, I can set a working plane on the roof, I can look at the roofs and so on. So all of those things still work. There's no difference to those. And the other one I can do is, this is the other one which is I don't use very often, align working plane to current view. So when I click on this, it'll look at my current view and set the working plane to my current view. So back to that, let's set my working plane. You can see my working plane is now square on the page. So if I draw an object on there and then turn my view, there it is. You can see my working plane was actually at a strange angle based on my 3D view. So I'm going to go back to layer plane and 2D. So that might take people a little while to get used to the difference between not having screen plane objects. I think that some people were unhappy about the loss of screen plane objects, but it's not affected me, and I don't think it's going to affect that many people. Someone's asking a question about that. No, you can still make so you can still make hybrid objects. Okay, well, let's make a hybrid object and we'll just see how that works. So back to a plan view. I'm going to create a little, maybe I'll create a little 3D view. So we'll just create a little 3D object. And I like automatic working plane, of course. Now this isn't new in Vectorworks 2020, this is older. So let's say, for example, I want that, and then I draw my shape here. Select those objects, let's make those into a symbol. So modify, create symbol. Here's my dialog box. Here's everything that we want to know. And we're going to go okay for that. And stick it in a folder that I might want. And okay. So you can see it still creates the hybrid object that you want. It's got the hybrid shape. So if I edit that and I edit the 2D components, I've still got that ability to add the 2D components to it. And in 3D, it still looks like the 3D. So it doesn't really affect symbols that much. But while we're talking about symbols, I don't know if anyone noticed when I created that symbol. I'm going to create a little What do we want that to be? We want that to be 140. And I want to shell that as well. I'm going to shell that. I'm going to make a hole. I'm going to stick it in a wall because there's some stuff I want to show you that's changed. And shell solid. That's my shell solid, and then I'm just going to pull that. I'll just stick it in the wall like that. So I'm going to make that object into a symbol. So it's selected. We're going to go modify, and we're going to create a symbol. So they have changed walls quite dramatically. They've rebuilt the whole concept of a wall. You won't see it, but the walls have been rebuilt. And I hope in the future that'll give us much more abilities in dealing with walls. But now my insertion location, it used to be where are we going to insert it in a wall? It used to be insert in walls, and we didn't have a choice. And now we can choose to insert it on the left edge of the wall, the center line of the wall, the right edge of the wall, or what I quite like, the core component, which is really quite cool, I reckon. Now we have new wall closure profiles, so we can actually choose how things close against a wall, against a window. This could take me quite some time, so I don't want to cover it in too much detail at the moment. I'm still learning how to use it as well. And I'm going to cover that later on with my user group. It's going to be a special we're going to do just on this. It's going to take a whole hour just to do this one. And we can exclude closures, and we have a lot of power with these. If I go back to a plan view, have I got a framing plan view? I hope so. Yeah, framing plan view. So if I grab a symbol and I stick it in my wall, what we should notice is that we can tell it to fit to, and I don't know if anyone's noticed, but it actually hasn't gone to the center of the wall. The center of my object is actually on the center of my core, which I think is a really neat trick. So if I get rid of that, and I'll just put in a standard window. Where's my window gone? Window object, let's put a window in. Now normally the window ends up in the center line of the wall. But with windows and doors, we now have this ability to choose to go to the core component center line. And you'll see my windows move back, so the center line of my window is now in the center of my core component. It does give us, with windows and doors and walls, the ability to wrap our exterior cladding or our exterior component into the window, which is quite cool. So I think I jumped ahead a little bit. I have jumped ahead. Where's my little object? This object here. Let's convert that to a group. So it's a shell object. So one of the things I can do with this object is I can put a texture on it. I think hopefully most of us are aware of textures. Now this part of the texture dialog box has changed, or the object info palette has changed. So let's apply a texture. Unfortunately, everything's corrugated iron. Let's make it fiberglass. No, I like the pink color, but that's just as it is. Now, one of the new, I think this is quite cool. This tool here is the texture tool. And the texture tool allows you to texture an entire object. So I'm going to choose a different texture. Let's make it wood. And so I've textured the entire object with wood using this tool. But I can also choose certain parts. Let's have a different type of wood on that piece. The one that Vectorworks use, they basically draw a seat, and they put a texture on the sides. So I'm going to texture the entire object, and I'm going to texture it with, we'll do the wood panel. So that's the entire object's wood panel, but actually I'd quite like the top to be a different texture. So I can choose the fiberglass again, and I can texture just the top. So now I've got a single object with wood texture on the sides, but fiberglass texture on the top, which I think is fantastic for being able to texture certain objects. Now it works fantastically well with these sort of single three-dimensional objects. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with things like a door at the moment. I don't know whether it will, but if I try to texture a door, Now you'll notice that when I go near a 3D object, the face turns red, so it recognizes it can texture it, but nothing here changes. So I can't texture anything on the door. So doors and windows, cabinets, I haven't tried the Stair Tool, but I suspect it's the same, that if it's an object, then you can't texture it that way. I started talking about the walls. So let's talk about the walls in Vectorworks. So this is a wall object, the wall tool. Let's look at my settings. Got a dialog box here. So here we have the siding, the air gap, the sheathing, and so on. And I have the ability now to look at wall enclosures at inserts. So on the left side, I can use settings from an edge, or I can make a profile. I can also choose to wrap portions. So I can choose to wrap that into the window, which should be quite cool. So if I go back to this wall here, I've got a window in that wall. Let's go back to my shape. Let's go to my wall closure, and let's look at wrapping. And I should just be able to click on that one, and it's going to wrap. Now it's going to use from edges. It's going to use the left and right the same. And okay. And I was hoping that would wrap that one in. And I found it just, there's so much wrapping to do. I've just got to be careful, and I've got to make sure that I learn how to do it properly. So it should wrap in, and it's going to at some point. I'll learn how to use it better, but it's quite new. So there is going to be a lot of power in the way that we can wrap these parts, these components into the wall. And I think it's going to be quite an improvement the way we do it. Let's go back to the view here. And I've got a save view already set up for this. So shaded perspective. Let's have a look here. I don't know if anyone likes the old OpenGL rendering, or if you remember the OpenGL rendering. It's no longer called OpenGL rendering any longer. It's now called shaded because it doesn't use OpenGL. So it depends whether you're on a Macintosh or a PC, but on a Macintosh it's now using Metal for doing the shading, which is a lot quicker than OpenGL, and on the Windows it's using whatever the equivalent of that is. We also have hidden line, which is common. We've had hidden line previously, but one of the nice things about hidden line, one of my favorite tricks here, is that in the past when you changed your view and you spun your view around, the hidden line rendering used to go wireframe, or it would go OpenGL until you stopped, and then it would re-render. Now, as you move around, it stays hidden line. And I think this is really cool. I really do enjoy looking at my buildings with hidden line, no shading. You can really get the form of the building, and you can see the colors of the building. And I think that's a really nice improvement. We've got stairs. Let's have a look at my module 6. The Stair Tool has been improved. We've now got some new options. We can change the height. If we have a look at our settings, it's had a little bit of an overhaul. We've got the stair width, we want that to be locked. We've got the height, we don't want that to be locked. With the tread, we might want to lock the tread depth. 280 I think is my favorite. And let's lock that, and we'll lock the riser height, but we don't have to. We can unlock these values if we want. If I start drawing, now in the past we've had this option here, stair, you click and it places a stair, but this is the new option, which I really like, where you can click to start the stair, this one. So I click to start, I come up to the corner, click, I go along the wall, click, click again, and then I say, I want to use that one. Oh, what have I done? I've turned something off. No, you guys won't believe I practiced this the other day, but I did. Okay, so let's do the stair again. Stair, that, settings, what's my configuration? Oh, I know what I forgot to do. All right, sorry, I forgot it now. So there to there, there, and I forgot to bring it up to the right height. And I'm snapping to the side of the building to do that. And I want it to be, and it thinks it needs to be an L stair, and there it is, it's created my L stair for me. It made it quite a bit fatter than I expected, but you can also double click on it and then you can start to pull these in and you can start to move those around. Now you can use the protected locked values if you like, or you can unlock it and you can just have a lot of fun. I'm just going to disable snapping at the moment. So you can move this around, you can move it to where you need to go, and it will adjust the stair in 3D as well, which I think is really cool. I think that for the plan view, it is really useful to be able to do that with the stair. There's lots of times where you want to put a stair in a situation, and let's just go back to my current stair, make sure I've set the one that I want. I want to use that one. My width, my value is going to be unlocked. I'm going to change that. Yeah, the stair width 900, that's locked. And here, when we start drawing it, we should be able to draw it along the edge of that wall. There it is there. And then double click on it. Let's unlock those values, click on the unlock, and then I can start pulling that along to where I want, click, and it updates the stair. So that, I think, is a really cool technique for doing that. Now, there is a limit to that. It won't do everything. So, of course, one of my favorite ones is the custom stair, where you can create a stair which goes in all sorts of directions. But I found when I tried it with this, these angles can't be considered a stair shape. So if you need a complex stair, I'm afraid you're going to have to go back to the custom stair in order to do that. So that's stairs, and I think maybe it's time to talk about rendering. So there's been a bit of discussion, I think, about twin motion, and twin motion is a high-speed rendering thing where you can quickly zoom in and zoom out. I don't know if you noticed, but I've got cars whizzing past. This is my little, if we have a look, this is my little quick start to architect. You might notice on this particular model, I've got the doors on this side and there's a little decking area. And when we have a look at my twin motion, the window's on the other side. So if I just turn the view around, I've got the window and the door on this wall, but I've updated my design. So one of the ways you can do it, now this is what one way to do it, this isn't the only way to do it, but I found that I can update to this one here, and you'll see that it's quickly updated to my latest design. And so now the chairs make sense. You can also really quickly export movies, so you can set videos. I've created one here. And it's a very smooth, and it creates a very nice animation in twin motion. Very cool. Now, the other thing you can do is, I've already exported one already, but I'll show you how to do it. So let's go to Vectorworks, Module 6. There's my building. I want to export that to twin motion. I want it to be a live sync. Now, I found it, Larry, you might remember that yesterday when I showed you this, I'd forgotten where it was. It's right here. The direct link tool is right here. I click on this button and it creates a direct link. And now it's done. If I go back to twin motion and I go back to the beginning and I go import direct link, there's my source. It's found it. It knows where Vectorworks puts stuff. And now it's put my big house in amongst my foliage. And you'll notice there are bits missing. There's the foundations missing, the roof is missing. So I'm going to go back to Vectorworks. I'm going to turn all of those back on. I'm not sure if I've got a saved view. Let's have a look. What does this one do? Save view, everything's there. Let's click on the direct link feature again. Okay, back to twin motion. What? It's there already. Amazing. So this is a really cool, and now can I make the movie? I don't know if I can make the movie again. Let's go video, video, and play. So I've now completely updated my model, and it's just as quick now to make my movie, and there's an export function, so you can actually export that movie as well. And setting the views is actually quite easy with this. You just go, I want to create a keyframe, that's my new keyframe. Let's turn my view up like this. I'll drag it across. Let's add another keyframe there, and now let's play the movie again. And when I update the Vectorworks model and I do the direct link again, where's it gone? There. So we do the direct link again, it just updates. So if this is a roof object here, let's set a roof. Let's go to my reshape tool. And I'll pull that roof back. And 3D again. I don't know if it works outside 3D, but I'll just make sure I go to 3D. Let's do my direct link again. And let's go back to Twinmotion. And my roof is updated. I just think this is so cool. And it's very quick. So Vectorworks, how are we getting on for time? So we've got a few minutes left. We've done walls, we've done stairs. I'm not going to do worksheets. There's a whole lot of new worksheet functions. But I wanted to talk about this. This is my site model. This is one I made yesterday. There it is there. So what's new? Let's update that and let's have a look at my site model settings. So what's new is that Vectorworks now has the ability to have components in the site model. The components I've chosen are grass, topsoil, and regular soil. And I want the datum of my elevation to be to the underside of my grass. I want my grass to grow on top of the ground. So I've got topsoil, I've got soil. And when we click and when we zoom in, I don't know if you guys can see that very well, but there's actually a top component, a middle component, and a bottom component. So I've got grass, topsoil, and then I've just got regular soil underneath. Now I don't have engineered soil. I don't know very much about that at the moment. We do have the ability to put in engineers subsoil. And when we go to a clip cube, let's just grab a clip cube, we'll pull that in. You can see that I've got the soil all the way through. Now you can put and you can control with, they're called, where are they gone? There is something I can do with these where I can put in not proposed contours. There's another thing I can put in for the source data, which would actually put in the geoengineer's heights of things. So I could actually see, I can actually control the subsoil. But there's a couple of really cool things. So I'm just going to do quickly, we haven't got a whole lot of time to do this, so I'm just going to quickly do a couple of the things that have changed with site modifiers. So I'm just going to create a site modifier. Let's just get out of all of that. I'm just going to create a rectangle and make that into a site modifier. And right click, create objects from shapes. It's a site modifier. And it's going to be a planar pad. Let's see how that is in 3D. So there's my planar pad. And one of the things I quite like about this new site modifier, there's a couple of things that are really quite cool. But one of them is the ability to have the site modifier selected and update the site model. Now I'm so used to actually going to the site modifiers, deselecting it, selecting the site model, click on update site model. This is just going to save a lot of time. Now at the moment this is just cut soil all over the place, and you can tell it's cut the soil. There are two types of soil here, and it's showing you the difference between one type of soil and the other. Now, at the moment I'm showing the surface in 3D. I can turn that off. So it's lifted the grass up. This is my topsoil underneath, and this is cutting through my other soil. But one of the other things I can do is I can play with the edges. So I'm going to choose a single edge, that edge, and I'm going to make that edge a retaining edge. I'm going to go to the next edge, which is that one. I'm going to make that one a retaining edge as well. And then I'm going to update my site model. And so now I have the ability to choose, without having to draw a grade limits or play with the grade limits, I can control the edges of my planar object, of my site modifier, which I think is really powerful. This is going to be so useful for the site modeling that I do. This ability to say, on one edge, I want it to be sloped, and on the other edge, I want it to be something else. So I can also have a batter slope on that edge, which is a batter slope of, so I can do a distance, a batter slope. I've got 45 degrees. Let's choose that edge there. We'll do the same thing there. We'll make that a batter slope. And let's update our site model. And you can see it's actually tried to create those. Now, it's a little problem here in the corner. Don't know what to do about that, but at least we've got this ability to control some of those things, which I think is really quite powerful. Now, the other thing I might want to do is this object here, you can see it's cutting through the different areas. So one of the things that's new with site modifiers is applying the texture. So I can apply a texture. I've actually got a class called site boundary that I've been using for all my grass. So let's apply that and then update my calculations. And you can now see that's my grassed area there. This object here is my site modifier. What type is it? It's a grade limits. It's got no texture, has it? So I'm going to apply a texture, which is my boundary texture. And let's update my site model. And I think I've applied this to, what have I done? To grade limits, contour. No, so these are quite new. So I thought that was going to put the grass over the whole thing like I used to with the create texture bed. So the create texture bed site modifier is gone. You can see that it's no longer one of those. Fit to objects, I haven't really figured out what fit to objects is all about. Fit to top, fit to bottom, it doesn't seem to matter what I change. So there's a couple of things that I really need to learn about with these new techniques, and it's going to take a little while for me to get used to them because they're so new. But some of these I think are super cool. That one, that ability to do that. There's another thing which I really like with these texture beds or these new site modifiers, and this also applies to hardscapes as well. We're going for time bar, but we've still got a few minutes. Let's put in a hardscape. So that's my hardscape. Let's just send that to the surface. So let's have a look. So there it is, it's on the surface. And that can also be a site modifier as it was in the past. But one of the new techniques is the ability with site modifiers to add a profile. Where's the add profile? So right click on my texture bed. Let's make that aligned. And then I think I have the ability to add a profile. And so if I want my site modifier to have a profile through here, I'm going to right click and edit this now. Edit my profile. So that's my profile object in here. Let's choose my reshape tool. Where's my profile gone? I've lost my profile. I did this yesterday and it worked fine. So I'm going to remove that and do it again. Delete my profile. I drew it yesterday, I drew it the other direction. So let's add a profile through here. And let's edit my profile. And reshape tool. Okay, it's gone missing. Yeah, I don't know where my profile's gone, but I should be able to adjust that profile and lift it up and down. And I did this last week and it worked perfect. But then you can change the profile and move the profile to different locations and then update your site model. So let's just update my site model, and it'll actually allow you to make changes to that. I wonder if I can do it with this one. So this one's going to be up here. Where's it gone? Aligned. If I align that, I should be able to add a profile to it. So configuration is aligned, and I want to edit the, I want to add the profile. And I should be able to edit that profile again. And that should have gone missing. Reshape, select all. It says there's a hardscape profile there, I just can't see it. It's there, it's selected. It's got a gradient, it's a plane in 3D. Oh, it's that thing. There it is. Sorry, I had my show clip cube turned on. So now what I should be able to do is grab hold of that contour, lift it up, exit my hardscape, and when I look in 3D, my hardscape has a rise just in that one area. So in that profile area, I've just made a small change. So let's move it from there to there. And this one, I should be able to see this one now as well. Let's edit my profile. Let's turn off the clip cube and see everything. There it is, so finally. So what I might want to do with this is to change the height of that one, height of that profile, or if I want to, I can type in the elevation. So I can go +2 inches, +2 inches, and it lifts it up. And when I exit and update my site model, we should see that that's made a change. You can see my site modifier here has a dip right through the middle. You can see it's kind of a V shape through there. This is a huge improvement in site modifiers, I think, this ability to have them have that rise and fall. And you can see what I've done with my hardscape. My hardscape here goes up to a peak. And I think this is a massive improvement. We've quickly covered that. Well, I haven't covered planting. Planting has the ability to have plants with root balls on them now, which I think is quite cool. Let's just put one in. So if I needed to know where the root ball for this plant was, there it is there. You can see it running around with my object. And that root ball is on a class, the excavation area is on a class, and you can make changes to that. And that's pretty cool. That's the major change, I think, to planting. The tools for planting are still the same, so we've still got the same basic techniques for inserting a plant. We've still got the same plant style dialog box. That's really pretty similar. But the difference is when we get to the root ball, we've got the root zones, and we can choose the root ball and the excavation as well. So we can choose those separately. So Barbara, I think that's probably it. I've kind of rushed through a whole lot of stuff. Hopefully
yeah, it was packed with information. Thank you, Jonathan.
I just remind people, have a look at my YouTube channel. I posted this movie the other day, which is pretty cool. And also my knowledge base, where we go through these things on a monthly basis. So earlier this month, I went through the landscaping changes with the landscape special interest group. Some of you were there, and I went through, the architect special interest group would be going through the walls and how we deal with those components, how we do with the wrapping. We'll go through that in detail next month.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. I will take the screen back just to make sure everybody knows where to go. I don't know why it won't let me switch the screen. That's
you've got the screen, haven't you?
No.
It says waiting for your screen.
Yep, but I don't. Okay. I just want to remind, I don't know if you see my screen now, but I just want to remind everybody that this week there's a customer appreciation promotion for Vectorworks. So current Service Select customers can enjoy a 40% discount on any new licenses that they add to their VSS. So check it out. Come to noveg.com, where you can find all the Vectorworks product line and more. And Noveg is always here for you. You can call us at any time, and our customer service is impeccable. Thanks again for joining us today. Thank you, Jonathan. This was priceless.
Thanks for having me, Barbara. Thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate your time. Some of you I forgot to mention. Some of the guys I see. Oh, where's he gone? Oh, David. It's been a long time, David, since we've caught up. So nice to see you here. And Stephen from NYC. Great to see you. But everyone have a great. Well, I was going to say have a great summer. Have a great fall.
Not over here. Yes, it's a great community, nevertheless. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.